Are you desperate to find joy in being a mom? Most of us moms have experienced days when, if we are being completely honest, we are tired, we are frustrated, and maybe we're even looking forward to a life without all these mom responsibilities and challenges. So if that's you, my friend, you are going to feel so seen today in episode number 106. I am speaking with blogger mom Kara Dick about her mom journey and some spiritual and practical ways she is embracing to truly find joy in being a mom. So if you're interested in enjoying your kids and leaving mom guilt behind, listen in. Do you feel like you've been given a raw deal? Like maybe things did not go the way you'd imagined, or like you're struggling at times to just hang on to the faith that you wholeheartedly believe in? Well, my friend, you have come to the right place, and you are not alone. I'm Shelly Sneed, your host of Unperfect, and it's my weekly mission to inspire women just like you and me to persevere in faith through authentic stories and experiences that are rooted in the truth of God's Word. So hang on. Hope and probably some humor are coming up. Kara, welcome to Unperfect.
Hi, Shelly. It's good to be here.
Before we get started, would you just tell my listeners a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do, whatever you want to share?
Sure. Yes. My husband and I have been married. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary last week, and we have 4 sons. Our oldest is going to be 15 in June, and our youngest just turned 6. So we've got that broad range of ages, and all of our children came to us through adoption. So that's been a really neat and sometimes a hard journey that God has brought us on. But yes, we're very blessed to have our 4 sons, and we live in North Dakota. My husband's a pastor and also a full-time business owner, so we stay busy.
I'm sure. And I think I saw on Substack that you just added a kitten.
Yes. Actually, well, we've had an inside cat for years, and we've had one outside cat to keep the mice away. But yes, a mama cat decided to make us her home this winter when it was still quite cold. So we had compassion on her. I know she had some kittens. So now we've got a lot of cats and kittens.
You got a lot of cats.
I'm not sure what to do.
Right, I'm sure. And 4 boys is a lot, even without the cat. So,
yes.
So before we jump in, I thought it'd be fun just to do a little this or that so we can kind of get to know you a little bit better. Summer or winter?
Oh, boy. I actually like winter.
Wow,
I really do. And I'm in North Dakota, so that's saying a lot. But
yes.
I like winter because it's cozy and it's easier to keep everybody in together. And it feels like in summer, everybody's just running everywhere, and it's harder to keep everybody, keep track of everybody. And I do love summers too, but winters are cozy.
Okay, I like it. And the winters there are beautiful because you've shared some pictures before that I've seen. I'm getting old enough to where I don't want to be too hot or too cold. So yeah. I think fall and spring over summer and winter for me. Okay, how about, I think I know the answer to this, but how about organized or messy?
Oh, I'm not naturally super organized, but I don't like the chaos of messy. So yes. I think through the years I have become more organized just because I have to keep my sanity.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Well, I am probably I'm messy by nature, and I'm trying to learn how to organize because I also don't like the chaos. So the way it looks, I can't think straight when everything is out of place. Okay. Well, here's a couple of mom related ones because we're going to kind of get into talking about motherhood here in a minute. But would you rather a homemade gift from your kids or store-bought?
Oh, I think homemade because there's just always, I don't know, there's something special about that, even if it's not something, it was made by a kid, but it's just special because they made it themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Same. I don't, I would hope most mothers would probably say that, but I am known in my house to throw away like projects for the kids when they were younger, like just again, because of the clutter problem. But recently we came across we had gone on a field trip and to like a ceramics factory, and all the kids made fish. And
Oh.
literally, they're the ugliest ceramic fish you've ever seen, and the
Mhm.
way they were painted, whatever. But I mean, it was cute and it was fun back then when they were little. But I
Mhm.
had this fish, and I was like, I am not keeping this. My son is now married; he's 23, and like, I just don't want this anymore. But I couldn't throw it out, so we gave it to his wife.
Yeah.
I put it in her Easter basket. I was like, you may want to throw it out, but I couldn't as a mom. So yeah,
Aw.
yeah, it's hard to get rid of those. Well, we're going to jump into this topic that I think is something we've all experienced as moms, and that's just really maintaining and finding the joy in motherhood in the day in, day out, when things are harder or not as we expected, which I am constantly saying my whole married life with and parenting has been, this did not go as planned. This was not what I thought was going to happen. So I'm just wondering if you'll start off by just telling us a little bit about your journeyhood, your journey into motherhood. You talked about adopting. So tell us a little bit about how you became a mom and what that looked like.
Sure. Yeah. So my journey into motherhood definitely started out much differently than I had expected, I guess, when my husband and I got married. We were just short of our second anniversary when we got a phone call out of the blue. We were not foster parents at that time. We had started talking a little bit about adoption, but it wasn't anything that we had seriously started to pursue at that time. And we got a phone call, and there were two little boys that needed a family, and we became parents later that day. So it was
Wow.
very fast and very unexpected. And see, they were 9 months and almost 2. The oldest turned 2
Okay.
while he was with us that summer. So we had our boys for the summer, and then they ended up leaving. And at that point, we didn't know what was going to happen in their future. We didn't know whether they would ever be coming back, but we just decided at that point that we needed to be ready at that in case they needed a home again. Without going into too much, we weren't foster parents at that time. They weren't officially in foster care, so the state let us keep the boys, but it couldn't be a long-term situation. So we did become licensed foster parents. Later that summer, we started the process. And in January of 2013, as our license was in the mail, we got another phone call, or actually a text message that time, and our boys needed a home again. So God just worked that timing out so perfectly in a way that we couldn't have done, and that was really confirming to us that this was what God wanted us to do and the way that He was going to start building our family. So since then, God has added to our family. Well, I'll back up a little bit. It was 3 years from the time that our boys first came to us to the time that we were able to complete their adoption. And since that time, God has given us 2 other boys that came at separate times, and we've been able to adopt each one of them. We did have some 2 other foster children through those years that moved on to either back to their birth families or on to another family. But yeah, it's been a really good, I guess, just seeing God work in some really incredible ways through the years, but a lot of challenges too.
Sure, absolutely. And I know we'll jump into some of that too. And as you know, we adopted two, our youngest
Mhm.
two. A lot of people, whether you adopt or not, I think it's a big jump. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a niece that she was sick, and she'll have her baby in July, but like she's been sick the entire 9 months. Like it's
Oh,
been,
yeah.
there's so many things that can come up that keep us from being able to feel like we're there in the moment. I was thinking about that.
Hmm.
So talk about that transition. Like you went from, I don't even know if y'all were thinking of how of starting the family, and then all of a sudden you were parents, and then you were jumping into that. Was that a hard transition for you guys?
Some parts were easy. I came from a very large family. There were actually 12 kids in my family, and I was number 4. So I had 8 younger
Wow.
siblings. So I was very used to being around kids, taking care of kids. I also worked as a pediatric nurse for a year before Paul and I married, and I moved to the States. So there were parts of it that were easy, but when you're just the big sister or you're the nurse or whatever, like you check out at the end of the day. You're not
Right.
on 24/7, 7 days a week. So
Sure.
that was a lot to just like to go from not having kids at all. Just it was just the two of us. We were busy. I was working. Paul was working, um, but just that constant need. And our boys, I mean, they had a lot of needs when they came to us, and just like they were busy toddler stage right off.
Right.
So yeah, that was challenging, and I found myself growing very tired very quickly, physically tired, emotionally tired, and spiritually tired too.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah. I've said this on this podcast multiple times, but if I go back and look at my journals from when my kids were young,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just thought I was doing the worst job, that someone else could have been a better mom. That
Yeah.
you have, I think we have so much, we feel responsible for so much, like
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
happiness, their holiness, their, their
Mm-hmm.
safety, it's like, we just feel this is all on us. And
Mm-hmm.
then, for me, that was probably the toughest part, was feeling that weight and feeling like
Yeah.
I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
meeting up to standards, especially, and that's when comparison really jumped in for me. And I'm looking at other moms and going, okay, they've got it together. Why can't I be like that? What was one thing that you found especially difficult?
In those early years, like I had mentioned a few minutes ago, there was 3 years that went from the time that our boys first came to us to the time that we were able to finalize our adoption. So in that time, there was a big chunk of time that we didn't know whether we were going to
Right.
become their forever family. As a mom, you have to bond with your children. But there was sometimes, like, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, but I don't know if I get to be their mom forever. So there's that
Right.
tension. God really helped me one time. There was another mom. She was reaching out to some mom friends because she was struggling with some things and some anxiety, and she had sent out a group email to a few different moms, and I was responding to that. And as I was talking to her, I realized I had to hold my children loosely, but I couldn't hold back love from them, because
Oh, yeah.
that's what they needed. And I realized, like, whether, I mean, it's tough to talk about loss, but whether I had the potential of losing my children because
Mhm.
they left my home, because they weren't adopted, or whether I lost my children in some other way. Like, our children are, I guess, as I was typing through my thoughts and trying to help my friend who was struggling with some things, I realized, like, all our children are a gift, whether they're foster or biological or adopted or whatever the situation is. Our children are a gift, and they're given to us for a time. We don't know. We don't know. We hope and pray that that's forever, but
Right.
we have this day to love our children and to be the mom that God has called us to be. And maybe that sounds kind of almost odd to talk about, that the thought that I wasn't guaranteed to be my children's mother,
Right.
or I would always be their mother, but that I wasn't guaranteed to have them forever. Actually,
Right.
that did bring some comfort to me, and some just being like, okay, God, this is the day you've given me them. This day, I'm not guaranteed. No mother is guaranteed another day or another year. So today's the day that I'm going to love my children and give them my heart today. So that
Mm.
that that did help me through some of those years of the uncertainty of knowing whether or not we were going to be together as a family forever. And even now that our adoptions are complete, like, you still realize your children are a gift. God's in control, and you have to rest in that. And I can't, now that they're adopted, I can't be swallowed up in fear of, like, what's going to happen if they do this activity, if I let them go this
Right.
place or do this thing. It comes down really to just resting in God and His good plan for your family. God
Yeah,
was
and I wrote down what you said, because that's so powerful, that to hold them loosely but not hold back love. Because,
Mhm.
and my story is a lot different. You were saying y'all just celebrated 15 years of marriage. Yesterday we celebrated 30. So our kids are now 18 and older, and I'm still learning that, to hold them loosely but
Mhm.
not withhold love, because they're going to make choices and go down paths that may not, I can't control, because now they're
Yeah,
adults.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's still that I got to hold, I still have to trust the sovereignty of God as much
Mhm.
when they were 2 and 3 and 9 as I do when they're 18 and 23.
Another struggle that I had at that same time was a lot of guilt because okay, so now I'm settled in that I'm gonna love them well. I'm gonna remember that they are a gift from God, and today is the day that I have with
Right.
them. But then I'm not always doing that perfectly in the way that I want to do that. I found that I also was struggling with a lot of guilt because I didn't feel like I was being the mom always that I should be, or I was not as patient as I should be.
Right.
Um, yeah, so, and I don't know, I've only had adopted children, so I don't know how this is, but it feels like I wonder sometimes if, especially because I've heard other moms whose their journey to motherhood was difficult, infertility, um, long periods of waiting for adoption, or long periods of waiting for a biological child, and then you get your children finally, and then it's like, but this is really hard. Like this is such a wonderful gift
Yes.
that God has given me. I wanted this for so long, and now it's like it's not always fun. And
Right.
you can
Absolutely.
struggle with, or I did anyways, and I've heard other moms too, like you struggle with so much guilt, and it's like this is the gift I wanted for so long, but almost like complaining about the
Right. Yeah.
the thing you
I've
wanted.
been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think I saw something online that says something like, remember something like the thing you're complaining about today is the thing you were praying to have in the past. But yeah, it really is.
so I see kind of two extremes. I see moms that are very open about complaining about their children publicly, and
Right.
that's not right, and that's very
Right.
hurtful. But then also sometimes, on the other hand, there's moms that feel like they can never be honest about the struggles that they're having with
Right.
anybody, even a trusted friend, and they just kind of keep it all bottled up. That's not healthy either. So I think what's really important for moms and what was helpful for me was to have some trusted friends, especially older moms, that you could talk to about what was going on and ask for prayer, and to realize that you're not alone in this struggle. Like you might feel
Yes.
like you're the only mom that struggles with this thing or that thing. So I think it is really important to have other moms that you can be open and honest with in a way that's also respectful to your children.
Right. And that was key for me because I mean, you're reading from my diary from
Yeah.
early motherhood. I like, and then I think another reason we don't want to talk about it authentically, not like you're saying complaining, but just to have authentic, wow, this is really hard. Or I felt just the shame of, I must be doing this wrong because
Sure.
everyone
Yeah.
else seems to be doing it right. In episode 104, my co-host and I were talking about biblical community, and that's one of the things when you can find somebody that you can truly be honest and authentic with,
Mhm.
you're often going to find that you're not alone. Like,
Yeah.
I wish it hadn't taken me so many years to realize that most moms were struggling, adoptive or biological,
Yeah.
with different things and similar things that I was. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I do think that's huge to find that community where we can be honest and in a way that we're encouraging each other and praying for each other, but also so that you can just hear what is true. The
Yeah.
enemy wants you to think you're alone,
Yeah.
but what is true is this is a universal thing, right?
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
that's been going on since Eve. So
Yes.
I love what you were just talking about of having other moms that you can talk to or even mentors. Talk about who was a mentor for you and what that looked like, especially early on in your mothering.
Sure. Yeah, I was certainly blessed that to have a godly mom, a godly mother-in-law, and some sisters that were a little farther down the motherhood road than me. But I have to say, one of the most special mentors in my life was my grandma. And
Mm.
by the time I was a young mom, she was already suffering from dementia, and her short-term memory really went quite so that I mean, she didn't remember what she had eaten for lunch, maybe not even what the weather was. Was it summer or winter outside? But her long-term memory was still there, especially things that she had, scriptures and hymns and things like that. So when I would talk to her on the phone, if you could get her talking about things that she remembered from her past, you could still have a conversation with her, even though her short-term memory wasn't there. And one day we were chatting, and she would still remember that I had boys, even though the last time I had seen her, I hadn't had children. But she would ask me how things were going, and one day she was just talking about, I don't know, we were talking about life and how things were going with my boys, and she just remembered how hard it was. And she had three boys, one of them being my dad, and
Yeah.
I've heard stories. So I know that raising her three boys was no walk in the park. But
Right.
but she said, as a young mom, she said that God had helped her to think about the verse that says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." And she said that was something that a promise that I claimed as a young mom, and God just really helped me to have joy in motherhood. And
Mm.
it was that was so sweet to me, because here she is, she's in her 80s, her memory is failing, her health is failing, but she still remembered with such clarity what it was like to be a young mom, and
Mm-hmm.
and how she had clung to a promise that the joy that God could give her would strengthen her to do this hard task of motherhood. And that really was, well, it was very helpful to me. It's not that I had never heard that verse before, or thought even about
Right.
those concepts, but hearing that from my grandma, who decades later was still remembering some of the struggles that she had had as a young mom, and the joy that God had given her that had allowed her to have the strength to keep going. That was just such a impression on me, and really, really helped turn around some of my thinking, and kind of maybe a rut of kind of feeling sorry for myself, or just,
Sure.
just like feeling alone in some of the things I was going through, and remembering, like, no, I'm not alone. This is nothing unique. Like, some of my particular challenges might be unique to me, but the whole work of motherhood, and the challenges,
Right.
and the things that we face, and the way that God helps us to overcome those challenges, that's not new. That was the
Yeah.
same things that my grandma was needing help with when she was a young mom.
And I thought of two things while you were talking. One is, I've heard that verse 1,000 times, and I think I focus on the joy part, and not that that's actually the thing that's going to give me strength. Like, I just had a moment of what? The other thing is, you were just talking about the uniqueness of and the challenges of motherhood. And I think it's sweet too how God uses motherhood as an example. I mean, we hear he's our father all through scripture, but he also compares himself to motherhood. Like, can a mother forget the babe that she's nursing,
Yeah.
or like the pains of childbirth that are,
Mhm.
giving way to that's what it's like waiting for the
Yeah.
new heaven and earth or whatever. It's kind of neat that I think he gets us too.
Mhm.
He gets what we're
Mhm.
going through.
Yes.
But talk a little bit about this joy, because I think that can be tough to understand, because we think of happy, right?
Mhm.
And we think, well, I can't just muster up happiness on the spot when I'm
Right.
frustrated or when I'm whatever. So talk about what exactly you mean by joy, and what is joy.
Sure. So I think joy is a really big topic, and we could talk all day long about
Sure.
joy and what it is, where it comes from, what it looks like, how to have it. So just stepping back to a little bit of the basics, like, we know that joy is the fruit, part of the fruit of the spirit. So true joy is something that God does in our lives. It's not something that we can
Mm-hmm.
just muster up. Joy is much more than a feeling of happiness, but I think it's not less than that either. Like, I don't think that I can be joyful and grumpy at the same time. Like, I can't I can't
Right.
be all grouchy to my family, but be like, but I've got the joy of the Lord. Like, it's
Right.
because it also, if I'm walking in the spirit and I'm experiencing joy, there's the other things that are going to come too. There's going to be the peace, and there's going to be the long suffering, and there's going to be the gentleness, all these things that are going to be
Yeah.
working together. So that's the first part, is that it is something that God produces in our lives. A word picture maybe that helped me to kind of see the difference between just happiness and true joy is
Yeah.
happiness would be kind of like, a hot summer day and you've got a glass of ice cold water, and it's satisfying and it's nice and it's great, but it's gone and the thirst comes back. Whereas joy would be more like having a deep well that is down deep, and it's fresh spring water, and it's cold and it's abundant, and you can keep drawing from it. And even though maybe everything around you is parched, but you've got this well and you can keep drawing from this well. You drink what comes out of the well, but it's not just a glass of cold
Right.
water that's going to be gone when your circumstances change. Joy does produce a feeling of happiness in us, but we might not have happiness right at that moment. Okay, so there's some things that
Right.
are just nasty to deal with, that every mom has dealt with. Okay, so let's think about like
Sure.
your kids have the stomach flu. Like that is not a happy moment when you're
Right.
dealing with the kids and you're cleaning up throw up out of the carpet and all that.
Right.
But I can still have joy even in moments like that if my joy is something that's deeper than just what's based on my circumstances. I really like what a commentator, Matthew Henry, he's an old commentator from, I think,
Yeah,
the
I love him.
1800s.
I love his
Yeah.
stuff.
His commentary on Nehemiah 8:10, he said, and this is a quote from him, he said, "Holy joy will be oil to the wheels of our obedience." And I just thought, like, that is such a beautiful way of thinking that. So, you have wheels, they need to be greased if they're going to keep moving smoothly.
Right.
And if you don't have the oil in those wheels, there's friction and there's creaking, and they're going to end up breaking down, and they're not going to function the way that they're supposed to. But you have that joy, and that makes the obedience so much easier. So motherhood really is a long road of obedience, and God is using motherhood to sanctify us. That's something
sure.
that has really, I've been thinking about a lot, is that it's not like as mothers we're perfect and now we're just trying to make our children perfect. Like we are, like we're
Right.
not perfect. And God is using
That would make it a lot easier.
Yeah. I'm sure our children would like it if they had perfect parents.
Yeah,
like actually
sure.
perfect parents, but yes.
Right.
When we have the joy of the Lord, that makes the obedience so much easier.
Yeah, I love both of those illustrations. The well, because it's like, again, you're going to the source, and you were saying it's not something we can muster up on our own. You wish you could turn it on like a light switch, but it's more like that lifestyle. Because if it's, you pointed out, it's a fruit of the Spirit. So it's the fruit of a Spirit-filled life. So it's something that God does in us. I love that. And then that last illustration you gave from Matthew Henry, I was thinking too, when you can choose joy in those situations, I think of contentment too. So it's like, I may not be laughing if there's a moment that calls for grieving, but deep down in my soul, there's that contentment, that peace in God, and trust in his sovereignty, which we talked about earlier, and his control. So I love that. Give us a few practical things. If we're feeling like our joy meter is running pretty low as moms, as women, what can we do to really tap into that well of joyfulness in our life?
I had to start really with my relationship with God when I was in the throes of motherhood, like right at the beginning, and I had my children that were not sleeping well at night, were very busy during the day. It became really hard to have that time with God that I wanted to have and that I needed to have. Before kids, I could have all the time I wanted in the mornings,
right?
So have quiet time with the Lord, and now all of a sudden it's like, how am I supposed to do this? Because my kids need me all the time, but I still needed that. So I had to get creative with ways to spend time with God. Sometimes that meant if they went down for an afternoon nap, I could have my quiet time then instead of in the morning. Sometimes, especially later on, my third son, he had a number of health issues, and he was tube fed, but we would have to run his tube feed the majority of it through the night. But he also had very severe reflux disease, so he would throw up all night long. So so every night, all night long, 2-3 times during the night, we're up with him cleaning up the the
Yeah.
throw up, and it was a really, really tough season. And really during that time, all I could do was listen to my audio Bible. So that's what I would do in the morning as I was waking up. I would turn on the audio Bible and I would listen. And so I think in starting with moms, like if your joy meter is low and you're trying to make sure that you're nurturing your walk with God, to realize that that might have to look different in a certain season of life. But what I would caution a mom against is just giving up and being like, okay, I can't spend this hour with God, so I guess I can't spend any time. Like, no, you have to spend what time you can. And God has such a heart for mothers, and He will meet you. It's not like he's like, oh, she didn't spend an hour with me this morning, so I guess I'm not
Right.
gonna, like, no, he wants to spend time with you. I think also we have to be really honest. Are we spending time on social media or watching YouTube or whatever time that
Yes.
we could actually spend with God? But we have these little pockets of time, so we're quick going on Instagram or whatever. That is not only is that going to steal time that you could be spending with the Lord, but also you're going to see all these pretty pictures of everybody else's perfect lives, and your life is very
Yes.
not perfect right now, and
Right.
that is going to absolutely steal your joy fast. I don't even know when Instagram was first came on the scene, but thankfully I was not on social media at all when my first boys came out, and I'm really, really thankful for that. In later years, when I had a patch of time there that I was on social media more, I really found that I started to feel just, I don't know, jealous or comparing, or it's like you
Sure.
go on Instagram to catch up on people or see pretty pictures or whatever, but it wasn't
Yeah.
good for my soul. And I think
Yeah.
that's
Same.
just
You
something you
start
have to be really, really
realizing,
careful.
oh, everyone else has it better than me, which
Isn't true
they're
at all.
everybody's putting their best reels forward, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had the same experience.
Yeah, so that's something. And then just, I mean, even without social media, looking around at other moms you see, just to be really careful
Yeah.
about comparing yourself or comparing your life. I know sometimes I start to fall into this mind trap of thinking that my life is harder, or like because my kids have
Right.
these medical issues, or that's a bad spot to be in your mind. So that's something that I've really been asking God to help me to realize when I'm doing that, and to get out of that mental space, because that's not a place where I'm going to be able to be joyful if I'm at that same time trying to look around and compare and feel sorry for myself, or
Right.
think that nobody else can understand what I'm going through, or that I have it harder. My kids are uniquely,
Right.
no other mother has ever faced this behavior
Right.
challenge. And that's a
Right.
lie from the enemy to isolate you
True.
too, from which we talked a little bit before about, or the importance of having relationships with other
True.
moms, because I think the enemy does really like to isolate us. Then another thing is, am I accepting help from other people, or am I really thinking, like you had mentioned a little bit earlier, like this is all on me, like I have to do this,
Right.
I have to be Wonder Mom? Is there some pride in there too, that I'm thinking that if I asked for help I'd look weak or something like that? But God's designed us to need help, whether that's from your husband or from a friend. If you're going through a season or a time that's really tough, to be willing to ask for help, because I think that joy is like, it's not going to compensate for choices that we're making. Like if I'm making the choice to not get the help that God wants to give
Right.
me through people, like I can't just be like, well, I've just got the joy of the Lord and that's my strength and I don't need people. Like God,
Yeah.
God works all those things together.
That's right.
So asking for help when we need it. And then another thing that God really showed me was that I had to be careful that I wasn't, talked about this a little bit, but the perfectionism, that I wasn't a perfect parent, and God didn't expect me to be a perfect parent. But hopefully I'm growing. Hopefully I'm letting God
Right.
sanctify me and to work off some of those rough edges. I heard somebody say once that your kids are like sandpaper. God's using
Yes.
that sandpaper to work off all those rough edges that are in my life. But I'm not a perfect parent. And so trying to live up to some level of perfection or people pleasing too. That can really be a joy
Yes.
stealer too. Like if I'm thinking that other people are going to judge me by how my children behave, and that's a tough one, right? But I have to be careful about that too. Am I letting my desire to please people steal my joy, the joy that God wants to give me in motherhood?
Yes. And that last one has gotten me so many times because I will volunteer for
Mm-hmm.
things that I have no business doing because, like you, I had 4 chaotic kids
Yeah,
at home that but it's that, well, other moms are volunteering, or what will they think if I don't volunteer?
yeah,
So that was one that got me. And I didn't realize till much later that that was people pleasing. That was
sure.
what was
Yeah.
causing that. It wasn't my desire to jump in and help. I think maybe some of it was, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
those are all so good. I love one of the things you said was being creative. And I think in finding time with God, and I think
Mhm,
we have to remember there is no formula for hanging out with Jesus. Like if you look
mhm.
through the gospels, he ate with his disciples. He walked with them. He traveled with them. Like it wasn't, okay, we're all going to sit down and spend time with Jesus for an hour and then we're going to go
Right.
do our thing, right? Like if we truly want to model that, we can really be creative. I love how you said the audio Bible. I have another episode, I can link to it in the show notes, about just creative ways to get into the word. I'm thinking more like when you need a fresh thing, but that's one of them is you can listen to it. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be that hour in the morning. I love getting up now that my kids are older before
Mhm.
everyone and having just as much time as I want to, but that was not the case when my kids were little. it
Right.
was it was little drops. And another thing you said about making choices like with social media and that kind of stuff, I
Mhm.
think too when my kids were napping or at school, I think I felt like I have to do all these chores, I have to get
Yeah,
all this stuff done. And I think sometimes God just kind of wants us to, the Mary Martha story, like, you know
right.
what? That'll get done at some point. I just want
Yeah.
you to be with me in this moment. So I think that's a kind of a choice we have to make in some of those times, which is hard because you don't have a lot of moments to yourself. So
Yeah.
I think we think productivity needs to
Right.
happen during this time alone.
Right.
You mentioned help, which is another great one. And as if you're listening to this episode too, and maybe you're in an older season and you can be the mentor. I like to encourage people, don't just ask, what can I do to help you? Because usually we have no idea.
Mhm.
But say, hey, I'm bringing you a meal. Do you want it on Wednesday or Thursday? Like, don't give
Mhm.
the mom a choice. Just say, I'm helping you in this way, or, send a gift card or something. When people have said, hey, is there anything you need? Number one, you don't want to impose on them. Maybe that's the pride that you're talking about that. But
Mhm.
sometimes too, your brain is so in such chaos, you can't even think of
Yeah.
what you need. So yeah, that's huge. So we had a son also who had a feeding tube and he
Mm.
had it for 12 years. He probably quit using it around 10 or 11. But through
Okay.
the night was when he would get his extra
Yeah.
calories. Now he didn't throw up, but his would come detached.
Yes.
So the feeding pump would feed the whole bed. And that's what we
Yeah.
were doing in the middle of the night is changing the sheets and
Yeah.
whatever. So it is whether we do all have unique challenges, but I do try to. So there've been times when people will say to me, "Well, I try not to complain because I know you had this," and I'm like, you know what? There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "Each heart knows its own bitterness." Like
Yeah.
whatever you're dealing with, and that feels a lot, it's a lot, and God wants to show up in your life just as much as He wants to show up in mine. I love that you said God just loves mothers and wants to be there for them. Also, the sandpaper, that is a great analogy. I think it's a good analogy for marriage too.
Yes.
My
Yeah.
husband and I were talking last night, like, how do you think we made it? Or at least we made it there. But I do think I can see so much of God using each other, but our kids to show us more about Him, to show us
Yeah.
about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I think your true character comes out as a
Mhm.
mom. And I was a yeller, which I hate. But even in this stage of my life, like you were talking about the guilt, I've gone back to my kids and said, hey, I have really struggled this. And I'm sorry when you were growing
Yeah.
up, I hope you see this is what was going on, but that wasn't you and that wasn't your load to carry or whatever. I think we always have opportunities to be authentic with our kids and
Yeah.
say, we are sinners too.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for our kids to see us coming to them and acknowledging that we sinned against them and we did something wrong, and
Sure.
modeling for them that takes a lot of humility as a parent to go to
Sure.
your kids and say, yeah, I did wrong. I need you to forgive me.
Yeah.
But
Because we
that
really
is
want to say, I was wrong, but this is what you did to make me mad.
right.
Instead of just, you know what? I lost my temper and that was wrong, period.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's super
Mhm.
hard. Well, I've loved the things you've shared. If you have some final thoughts, I would love to hear them, or any words of encouragement that you could give to moms who are listening now, Kara, to this conversation.
Sure. So we talked a lot about like the spiritual aspect of joy and finding that joy in the Lord, but I think also it's really important that we find ways to actually enjoy our kids too. One of
Yes.
my youngest son, when he came to us, he had a lot of stuff in his history, and he came with a lot of behavioral issues. So we actually were in behavioral therapy for a while, and one of the things that they had us work on, really, it was very much working on the parents, as much as
Right.
working on the kids.
Yeah.
And one thing that they had us focus on was special moments. So every week when we would have our next meeting with the therapist, we would need to talk to her about special moments that we had had with our child, because they said, like, when your kid is having behavioral issues, it's more important than ever to bond with that child and to have happy memories with that child, which can sometimes be really hard if you're having a lot of issues going on. For every mom, wherever your kid is on the behavioral spectrum, having those special moments with them, that's going to help you to enjoy your motherhood a lot more. So I
Yes,
think it's really
absolutely.
important in all the busyness of life to purposely have fun with your kids. And that's something that I have to work on really hard because I'm a very
Yes.
duty person. To go and purposely just have fun with my kids, that's that's something that doesn't come really naturally to me, but it's something that's really important and something that I've been trying through the years, trying to make purposeful. So that can be anything from like little rituals, a prayer that you say, or a song that you like to sing together. It can be going on a special outing, sometimes with all your kids, or
Yeah.
sometimes just with one child. Get the other kids busy doing something, and you just go out for ice cream or something. Just having those special moments is something that will really help fill your joy cup as a mom. Laughing together, whether that's watching a funny movie together or playing games together or having some inside jokes or whatever, just to really
Yes.
like not take yourself so seriously all the time, and
Yes.
just
Yes.
really have fun with your kids as much as possible. Another thing is to catch your kids being good. Like, it's really easy to catch your kids doing
Yes.
stuff great. I know in some of our foster care training, they had said for every one thing negative that you say to your kids, say 10 things positive or something. It's like, that's really, really
Yeah.
hard sometimes.
It is. It is.
That will help. That will help you as a mom to have more joy, because then you have to be very intentional sometimes about looking for the good things that your kids are doing or the cute things that they're doing, and really celebrating those things and making sure to acknowledge them. And I know sometimes if your kids have been kind of naughty all day and then they do something good, it's like I don't even feel like calling, like I
Right.
it's like, well, it's
Yes.
about time they did something,
Yeah.
but like, no, like, to see that, and because that's how we all are, like, all of us
Sure.
thrive on praise. And
Hmm.
I think sometimes we forget, or I do anyways, like how hard that is. If I have somebody in my life that's just negative, 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 pointing out to all my
Yes.
faults, it's like after a while you just kind of feel like giving up. But if you have somebody that's praising you for something good that you did, or thanking you, or then you want to do more of that, right? So
Right. Yes.
that's something that can be really helpful, just in a really practical way. Another thing that's helped me is to try and record some blessings. Or for a while, we were doing a memory jar. Like, every time we had a funny memory or a happy memory, we'd write it
Oh,
down
that's
in a
good.
jar and pull it out every once in a while, and read about like the time that my my kids got sprayed by a skunk. Like, and then
Oh
like, that really
no.
did happen. my
Oh my
husband
goodness.
my
Yeah.
husband caught a skunk in a trap, and then my oldest son, he thought it was a cat, and he loved cats, and so he went to give the cat a kiss, and it wasn't a cat, it was a skunk. He got sprayed really up close and personal. So,
Wow.
just, and that was not a fun experience at all, but it was like, now we can just laugh about it.
Yeah.
But keeping happy memories or funny memories or even memories of the hard stuff that God has brought you through, and then reviewing those as a family. I think sometimes we forget the victories that we have had or the things God
Right.
has done for our family, the ways He has helped us. Those are some ways that God has helped me to actually, like, not just have the spiritual joy, but to actually really enjoy my kids more too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And when you were talking about the special moments and the having fun with them, I know for me, I like to multitask. Like I like to, okay, I'm going to sort of play this with you, but over here I'm going to be doing this. And I
Mhm.
think it's so important to take time to really focus on them. And I know that was something I always struggled with. And even later in life, when phones, came around, you were doing everything on your phone, to hear your own kids say, "Hey, Mom, can you put your phone down and do this?" And then you're like, oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's painful, but yes, I need to remember to do that. Well, Kara, you have given us some great stories and some great insight into tapping into that joy that is a promised fruit of living a spirit-filled life. So I love this. I think you've given us a lot to keep in mind and even some practical things to tackle in the days to come. But tell my listeners where they can find you, and I'll make sure I link to everything in the show notes too.
Yes, so I have a blog. It's called eachordinarymoment.com, and my mission there really is to equip women to thrive in their hearts and their homes. So I share there some recipes. I try and keep recipes that are really simple and easy to make no matter what season of life you are in. And then also biblical encouragement and some practical ideas for simplified homemaking. So when life is kind of crazy, you can still keep a home that you enjoy being in. So that's my blog. And then I do send out a monthly newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter on my blog, or also I'm on Substack. It's just once a month, so it's not going to clog up your email
Right.
inbox or anything like that. But I try to keep that really encouraging and helpful for moms in all stages of life, with a special emphasis on moms of special needs kids. But I do think that a lot of the things that will help a mom with special needs
Yes.
kids are also going to help a mom that having any kind of issues, because our God
Sure.
is the same and He works and has the same solutions many times for
That's right.
whatever
Right.
kind of things we're going through. One thing that I mentioned, in the relationship with God, sometimes having to get really creative. One thing that has helped me a lot sometimes to do is when I didn't have a lot of time to spend in the Word, but writing out a verse or two a day was really helpful, because the act of writing something, like there's all these scientific studies behind, when we actually write something
Sure.
out, it sinks deeper down into our minds
Absolutely.
and our hearts. And so one thing that I like to do is make different topical scripture writing plans. So I'm going to be doing one on joy, and it'll take you through a month of scriptures on joy, so that you can just really dig into what the scriptures say. And most of the passages are just 1 or 2 verses. So 5 to 10 minutes a day, getting into God's word and writing out some scriptures is just one way that moms can spend time with the Lord, even if they're in a really difficult season or a season that's extra busy. So that will be also for your listeners, and I'll get you the link for that.
All right, links to everything we've mentioned are in the show notes. And I hope you're already deciding which of those strategies that Kara has mentioned that you're going to put in place first. Whether it's finding an intentional way to have fun with your kids, or creating a memory jar, or just looking for the more positive things to point out about them. Or maybe you need to be more consistent in bringing Jesus and His Word just into your day as an integral part, so that you truly can rely on His strength for your source of joy. I would love to hear how you're finding joy in your role as a mom this week. So let me hear from you at hello@shellysneed.com, or you can reply to my email each week. I read and respond to every email that I get. There's a link to that newsletter in the show notes as well. And finally, before you click on the next podcast in your library, in your queue there, really quickly, give us a rating, a good rating, so other unperfect peeps like us can find the podcast. I really appreciate that. As always, I am praying that you are able to see glimpses of God's glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life this week. I'll see you next time.